I want to tell you about a patient of mine. Her name is Helen. Helen is 73 years old, and she came to see me about a year ago for a routine cardiovascular review. Helen was not a person who ignored her health. She was meticulous. She tracked her blood pressure every morning. She took her statin without fail. She walked 40 minutes every single day without exception. She cooked almost every meal from scratch at home because she believed that home cooking was the foundation of healthy eating. And she was right about that. But when I looked at her blood work, something was not adding up. Her LDL was 98, well controlled on her statin. But her oxidized LDL, a more specific and more dangerous marker that I had specifically tested because of her family history, was elevated at 78 units per liter, where optimal is below 60. Her CRP, her inflammatory marker, was 3.1, moderately elevated for a woman on a statin who exercised every day and ate home-cooked meals. That was higher than I would have expected. Her coronary artery calcium score, done 6 months earlier, was 312, which for a 73-year-old woman places her at the 87th percentile for her age and gender, higher than 87% of women her age in the population studied. Her arteries were carrying more plaque burden than her lifestyle and her medication seemed to warrant. And I sat with that for a moment before I started asking questions. Because when numbers like these do not match the lifestyle of the patient in front of me, there's almost always something specific that explains the gap. I said to Helen, "Tell me exactly what you cook with every single day. What oil, what fat, what do you use when you put food in a pan?" And she told me without hesitation, she said, "I use vegetable oil. I always have. My mother used it. I use it." It is what you use when you cook, isn't it? And I said, "Helen, I want to talk to you about that oil, because what she was using, what her mother had used, what millions of seniors are using in their kitchens every single day, in the belief that it is the healthy choice, was very likely contributing to the gap between Helen's excellent lifestyle and her concerning arterial numbers in ways that she had never been told about. And that I believe every person over 70 who cooks at home deserves to understand. I am Dr. Daniel Chen, and today I want to explain what is actually happening inside the bottle of vegetable oil that most seniors have in their kitchen cupboard. What happens to that oil inside the body? And most importantly, inside the arteries of people over 70, and what the evidence shows about what to use instead. So let me start with what vegetable oil actually is, because most people have never been told, and the answer is more important than it sounds. The term vegetable oil is a marketing term, not a scientific one. It covers a wide range of oils derived from various plant sources, including soybean oil, corn oil, canola oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, and cottonseed oil. These oils are found individually in bottles labeled by their source, and in blended form in bottles simply labeled vegetable oil or cooking oil. Now, there are two things about these oils that I want to explain, because they are the foundation of everything else in this video. The first thing is how they are made, and the second thing is what they are made of. Let us start with how they are made, because this is something that most people have genuinely never considered. The oils that come from olives or from avocados or from coconuts can be extracted simply by pressing the fruit or the seed under mechanical pressure. This is called cold pressing or expeller pressing, and the resulting oil is largely unaltered from the chemistry of the original fruit or seed. But the oils that come from soybeans, corn kernels, sunflower seeds, and similar sources cannot be extracted by simple pressing alone. Their fat content is too dispersed within the plant material to be mechanically extracted in meaningful quantities. So they are extracted using chemical solvents, primarily a petroleum-derived chemical called hexane. The plant material is washed in hexane, which draws out the fat content. The hexane is then evaporated off under heat, leaving behind the crude oil. But the crude oil at this stage is not the clear, neutral-smelling, pale yellow liquid that sits on grocery store shelves. It is dark, strong-smelling, and contains many compounds that are removed in subsequent processing steps, including degumming, refining with sodium hydroxide or caustic soda, bleaching with activated clay to remove color pigments, and deodorization, where the oil is heated to very high temperatures, sometimes above 200 degrees Celsius, under a vacuum, to remove the volatile compounds that give the crude oil its distinctive and unpleasant smell. This entire process is called ROPD, refined, bleached, deodorized. And what it produces is a chemically processed industrial product that is stable, neutral in flavor, and inexpensive, but that is significantly different in its chemistry from the oils that can be extracted without industrial processing. And that difference matters profoundly for what happens inside the body of a person over 70 who cooks with it every single day. Now let me explain this second thing, what these oils are made of at the chemical level, because this is where the arterial story really begins. The fats in vegetable oils are predominantly polyunsaturated fatty acids, or PUFAs, specifically a type called omega-6 fatty acids, including linoleic acid, which makes up 50 to 60% or more of the fat content in most vegetable oils, including soybean oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, and the generic vegetable oil blends. Now, omega-6 fatty acids are essential fatty acids. The body needs them and cannot make them. They must come from the diet. And at appropriate dietary levels, they play important roles in cellular structure and in the production of signaling molecules that regulate inflammation. But here is the critical issue. Polyunsaturated fatty acids, including omega-6s, are chemically unstable compared to saturated fats and monounsaturated fats. They have multiple double bonds in their carbon chain. And these double bonds are vulnerable to a chemical reaction called oxidation. When polyunsaturated fatty acids are exposed to heat, to light, or to oxygen, they oxidize, they become rancid. And in the process, they form a range of harmful compounds, including lipid peroxides, aldehydes, including a particularly reactive and particularly harmful compound called 4-hydroxynonenal, or 4-HNE, and other oxidation products that are toxic to cells, to DNA, and to the endothelium, the inner lining of blood vessel walls. Now, here is why this matters so specifically. For cooking, when you heat vegetable oil in a pan for cooking, you are creating exactly the conditions under which these oxidation reactions occur most rapidly. Heat accelerates oxidation dramatically, particularly in polyunsaturated oils. And the oxidation products, the 4-HNE, the aldehydes, the lipid peroxides, are not destroyed by cooking. They remain in the cooked food and are consumed with every meal. Research published in the journal Food Chemistry found that commonly used vegetable oils, including sunflower oil and corn oil, generated significant quantities of 4-HNE and other aldehydes when heated for cooking at domestic temperatures. And importantly, the longer the oil was heated, the higher the aldehyde concentration. In a domestic kitchen, where a pan might be heated for 10 to 15 minutes before and during cooking, the aldehyde production reaches levels that researchers described as a potential health risk with regular consumption. Now, what do these oxidation products do inside the body of a person over 70 who consumes them with every home-cooked meal? The first and most important effect is on LDL cholesterol in the bloodstream, as I have described in my videos on arterial health. It is not LDL cholesterol itself that initiates plaque formation. It is oxidized LDL. LDL that has been chemically damaged by reactive oxygen species in the bloodstream. When dietary aldehydes and lipid peroxides from cooked vegetable oil are absorbed into the bloodstream, they contribute to the oxidative burden in the blood that oxidizes LDL, accelerating the very first step of the plaque formation cascade. The penetration of oxidized LDL through the endothelium and the triggering of the immune response that leads to foam cell formation and growing plaque. This is why Helen's oxidized LDL was elevated, despite her statin controlling her total LDL well. The statin was reducing the amount of LDL in her bloodstream, but the daily consumption of heated vegetable oil was contributing to the oxidation of the LDL that remained into the form that does the damage. The second effect is direct endothelial damage, 4-HNE, the reactive aldehyde produced in the highest quantities when polyunsaturated vegetable oils are heated, has been specifically shown in cell and animal research to be directly toxic to endothelial cells, the very cells that line the blood vessel wall and produce nitric oxide that regulates blood vessel tone and blood pressure and maintains the smooth, non-sticky surface that prevents platelet adhesion and early plaque formation. Direct endothelial toxicity from regular dietary exposure to 4-HNE in cooked food impairs the endothelium's ability to do its most critical job, protecting the arterial wall from the oxidative and inflammatory processes that drive atherosclerosis. The third effect is systemic inflammation. Linoleic acid, the predominant omega-6 in vegetable oils, is metabolized in the body into a range of pro-inflammatory signaling molecules called eicosanoids, including prostaglandins and leukotrienes. Now, at appropriate dietary levels, these pro-inflammatory signals are a normal and necessary part of the body's immune response. But in the modern dietary environment, where vegetable oils have replaced traditional cooking fats in almost every food and in most home kitchens. Since the 1970s and 1980s, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 in the diet has shifted dramatically from an estimated historical ratio of approximately 4:1 to a current dietary ratio in most Western diets of 15:1 or even higher. And this dramatic imbalance in the omega-6 to omega-3 ratio is associated in research with a state of chronic, low-grade systemic inflammation that contributes to the very atherosclerotic process that vegetable oils replaced saturated fat, specifically to prevent in the 1970s and 1980s, when the dietary guidelines of that era pushed people away from butter, lard, and other traditional cooking fats, and toward the vegetable oils that were marketed as heart-healthy alternatives. Helen's CRP of 3.1, the moderately elevated inflammatory marker that did not fit her otherwise careful lifestyle, may have been partly reflecting the chronic inflammatory burden of 30 years of daily vegetable oil cooking. Now, let me be clear about something important before I tell you what to use instead, because this is a topic where the evidence is genuinely complex and where I want to be completely honest with you. The research on vegetable oils and cardiovascular health is not uniformly negative. Some large epidemiological studies have found that replacing saturated fat with polyunsaturated vegetable oils is associated with reduced cardiovascular events in populations studied. And the evidence for the harm of dietary linoleic acid at population level is less clear-cut than the mechanistic evidence for oxidation products. Suggests what I am telling you is not that vegetable oil is definitively proven to cause heart disease. In a controlled clinical trial, what I am telling you is that the mechanistic evidence for the oxidation products generated during cooking with polyunsaturated vegetable oils is real, well-studied, and concerning, particularly for adults over 70, in whom the oxidative stress environment of the body is already higher than in younger adults, and in whom the cumulative effect of daily exposure to dietary oxidation products over decades deserves serious consideration, and that the alternatives I am about to describe have a much stronger and much more consistent evidence base for cardiovascular protection in older adults than the vegetable oils they would be replacing. Now, let me tell you what I told Helen to use instead. The first recommendation was extra virgin olive oil for all cooking at medium or low temperatures and as a dressing and finishing oil for everything else. I have discussed extra virgin olive oil at length in previous videos, but the specific reason I recommend it in the context of this video is its chemistry. Extra virgin olive oil is predominantly monounsaturated fat, specifically oleic acid, at approximately 70 to 80% of its fat content. Monounsaturated fats have only one double bond in their carbon chain, making them significantly more stable against oxidation than polyunsaturated fats with their multiple double bonds. When extra virgin olive oil is heated for cooking, it generates dramatically lower amounts of 4-HNE and other toxic aldehydes than vegetable oils under the same conditions. Research published in the journal Acta Scientific found that extra virgin olive oil generated significantly lower aldehyde concentrations than sunflower oil or corn oil when heated at typical domestic cooking temperatures for equivalent periods. And extra virgin olive oil contains natural antioxidants, including polyphenols, particularly hydroxytyrosol and oleuropein, that protect the oil itself from oxidation during storage and heating, providing a level of intrinsic oxidative stability that refined vegetable oils, stripped of their natural antioxidant content during industrial processing, simply do not have. The second recommendation for higher temperature cooking, for anything requiring a genuinely high heat, pan searing, roasting at high temperature, or any cooking where the oil will reach temperatures above 200 degrees Celsius, was avocado oil. Avocado oil, like olive oil, is predominantly monounsaturated at approximately 70% oleic acid and has a smoke point of approximately 250 to 270 degrees Celsius, making it suitable for the highest temperature cooking that domestic kitchens typically require, without the oxidative instability of polyunsaturated vegetable oils at those temperatures. The third recommendation for specific uses was genuine butter or ghee from grass-fed sources, used sparingly. Now I know that recommending butter to a patient with cardiovascular risk factors is something that would have been considered shocking by many doctors a generation ago, when the dietary fat and cholesterol hypothesis was at its peak influence, and when butter was the primary target of the switch to vegetable oils. That defined the dietary advice of the 1970s through the 1990s. But the research on saturated fat, and specifically on dairy saturated fat, has become more nuanced than the original hypothesis suggested. Butter and ghee are predominantly saturated fat, and saturated fat is highly stable against oxidation during heating, generating minimal oxidation products compared to polyunsaturated vegetable oils at cooking temperatures. And the specific saturated fats in dairy, including butyric acid, short-chain fatty acids, and conjugated linoleic acid, have been shown in research to have properties that are distinct from, and in some cases opposite to, the simple saturated fat raises cholesterol model that drove the original recommendation to switch to vegetable oils. In the first place, use sparingly as a cooking fat for specific purposes. Butter or ghee from grass-fed sources is a reasonable addition to a cooking fat repertoire for older adults who are using it alongside predominantly olive oil cooking and a Mediterranean-style dietary pattern. What I told Helen was simple. Remove the vegetable oil from your kitchen. Replace it with extra virgin olive oil for most cooking, avocado oil for high-temperature cooking, and a small amount of grass-fed butter for the specific things that butter is genuinely best for, and nothing else. Helen made those changes for 10 months. When she came back, her oxidized LDL had fallen from 78 to 51, below the optimal threshold of 60. For the first time since we had been measuring it, her CRP had fallen from 3.1 to 1.2, the lowest it had been in years, without any change to her statin, her exercise routine, her blood pressure medications, or any other aspect of her health management. She had changed one thing in her kitchen, and the inflammatory and oxidative markers in her blood had moved in the right direction for the first time in a long time. She looked at me and she said, "I have been cooking every meal at home for 30 years because I thought it was the healthiest thing I could do." And I was right about cooking at home, but nobody ever told me that what I was cooking with mattered as much as what I was cooking. Let me bring everything together now. The vegetable oils that most seniors cook with every day, including soybean oil, corn oil, sunflower oil, safflower oil, and the generic blended vegetable oils, are industrially refined products that are predominantly polyunsaturated omega-6 fatty acids. When heated for cooking, these oils generate significant quantities of toxic aldehydes, including 4-hydroxynonenal and lipid peroxides, that when consumed daily with every home-cooked meal, contribute to LDL oxidation, direct endothelial damage, and systemic inflammation in ways that accelerate the arterial aging process, particularly in adults over 70, in whom the oxidative stress environment is already elevated, and the cardiovascular consequences of daily exposure to dietary oxidation products are most significant. The alternatives with genuine evidence for cardiovascular protection are extra virgin olive oil for most cooking, avocado oil for high temperature cooking, and grass-fed butter or ghee, used sparingly for specific purposes. Helen changed one thing in her kitchen: the oil she had always used, because her mother used it, because it was what you use when you cook, and her oxidized LDL fell below optimal for the first time. Her inflammation fell to its lowest level in years, because what you cook with matters as much as what you cook. And now you know what to put in the pan. I am Dr. Daniel Chen. If this video made you think about the oil that is sitting in your kitchen cupboard right now, please share it with someone over 70 who also cooks every meal at home with vegetable oil, in the belief that it is the healthy choice. Subscribe to this channel for weekly videos made with genuine care for older adults who deserve real information about their own health. And leave me a comment below. Tell me what oil you currently cook with and whether you are going to make a change after watching this. I read every single comment, and I genuinely look forward to hearing from you. Take care of yourself and take care of what you put in the pan, because every meal is either working for your arteries or against them. And now you know how to make sure it is working for them.